Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for your great testimony this morning. This has been a fascinating hearing, and I thank Senator Hatch for his longtime advocacy for kids, and specifically foster care and kids who are facing issues at home, and, you know, how do you find the right place for them? And I know this is not an easy issue, but I think one thing we've learned today in talking to you all is this idea of therapeutic foster care and therapeutic care for kinship parents makes a whole lot of sense. And the cost savings that were talked about were very interesting, because then there's an assumption out there that this is going to be a lot more expensive to have that kind of intensive care, not just for foster parents, as Ms. Killett talked about, but actually for kinship parents and other caregivers as well. I have a couple questions that you know, I've just been thinking about, and since we've got this expert panel here, I want to get your input. First, I've been very fortunate, and Ms. Burton knows this, to have had the Congressional Coalition for Adoption lend us an intern this summer. And Carrie Richmond did a terrific job, and she, like you, has shared her experiences of going through the foster care system. Sadly, in her case, a lot of abuse in foster care and adoption. And but she's come out of it just this incredibly strong, resilient young woman. And she has helped us to kind of think through the policy issues. We also got this group back home that I assume a lot of states have, which is a Foster Youth Advisory Board, and it's actually made up of young people who have been through the foster care system. I think that makes a lot of sense. But here's the thing that's been really bugging me, and I want to get your input on it. There was a sting operation back in 2013, the FBI did nationwide, on child sex trafficking, an issue that I've worked on a lot. I started a caucus on it here. It's bipartisan. We've been doing work on this. But here's the amazing and very sad statistic in that. 60% of the victims that they recovered nationwide from over 70 cities were from foster care or group homes. 60% of the kids in sex trafficking. And, you know, you think about that, does this go to what you're talking about? I mean, not just the fact that, in Ms. Burton's case, she's been through this system, and Ms. Killett's case, she's been at the other end of it as a mom for the professionals here. Is there something that we should be talking about in this regard? In other words, is it less likely that those kids will end up being victims of sex trafficking, being vulnerable, if they're not in the congregate care homes, in the group homes? And maybe I'll ask Ms. Burton to start on this, and then if you could respond, Ms. Butsk. I know you had some thoughts on that earlier.
Thank you for that question. It is definitely a part of it, congregate care, because when you have a child in congregate care, there is not someone maybe looking for the signs or aware of the signs. There's too many children. The child gets lost. Runaways are just something that happens. They don't really think about what's happening on the street. And you have a child who is maybe trying to fill a void because they haven't received therapeutic services to learn about why they're feeling the way that they feel. They just want to be loved. There's so many things that we could talk in more depth about that go into a child ending up in sex trafficking, and I'll let some other people talk about that, though.
You're so right. What we say is that a child can age out of a system. They don't age out of a family. So there's somebody who stays with them, who watches, who knows that they're missing, and that makes all the difference in the world. It's so easy for young people to get lost and to be then caught up in the sex trafficking world. I used to work at Covenant House with runaway and homeless youth, and we always talked about the Covenant House suitcase, which was a garbage bag, and you'd see a kid being homeless, being kicked out of their home, and all they'd have is a garbage bag, and nobody cared where they were going. With a family, they're much more likely to forgive, they're much more likely to take them back, they're much more likely to let them sleep on the couch when they don't have any place to be. So that family, finding that family, notifying that family is critically important.
Well, thank you for that response. We talked earlier in Senator Stabenow's questioning about this legislation that we've introduced. It's Senator Baldwin, Senator Stabenow, and myself, and it's called the Family-Based Foster Care Services Act. And one of the things that we're trying to do here is to create a standard, a national standard for what is therapeutic foster care, because our sense is that, you know, each state does it a little differently. And my question to you is, how can a uniform definition of therapeutic foster care services promote better quality of care and also more accountability in the training of staff and foster care parents. Does that make sense? And since I'm getting toward the end of my time, if you could maybe Mr. Nibbe and Ms. Williamson, since you haven't responded yet, or Ms. Killett, give us a response to that quickly, but then also, if you don't mind sending me a written response, that would be very helpful. And look at the legislation, I'm sure most of you have already, and tell us what you think about this idea of coming up with a uniform definition.
So I don't have a uniform definition, but I would like to say that I would like to follow up with a written response, because I think it's worth and due a lot of thought to give you that information.
That would be great.
Mr. Nibbe, would you do the same, and Ms. Williamson? Great.
Senator Scott.
Thank you.